of Honour, Ms. Mugda Sinha, is Additional Secretary to the Government of India and is currently the Managing Director of ITDC. With over 2 decades of experience in governance, she has held leadership roles including Director General of Tourism at the Ministry of Tourism. Her dynamic and forward-looking leadership is strengthening ITDC's operations and aligning them with the nation's tourism vision. And I now have the privilege of inviting ma'am for the keynote address. Let's put our hands together to that.
Namaskar and very good morning to everyone. Honorable Lieutenant General Seth, the chair for this session, and also the president of the Foundation for Aviation Sustainable Tourism, my respected super seniors and former secretaries of tourism, Shri Vinod Joshi sir, Shri Arvind Singh ji, Shri Bez Barua ji, my colleague from the hospitality industry, Shri Atul Bhalla ji, and the Vice President of FAST, Shri VP Agarwal ji, delegates, students, ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media. It's indeed an honor to be here amongst our super seniors who've already laid very, very strong foundations for the deliberations of this seminar. But before I begin, my very, very sincere apologies. I was traveling last night and I think there was some confusion. I'm slightly groggy also because my flight got delayed last night and I landed post midnight. So my very, very humble apologies to everyone, and I really, really appreciate the fact that I was very warmly welcomed when I came. I would also want to wish everybody a very happy World Tourism Day, which the ministry and the government is celebrating today. And to be a part of this seminar on the eve is very nice. Just before I came here, Arvind sir was telling me that everybody seemed to have spoken everything. So you'll have to bring in the government perspective, but I think I also bring in a disruptive perspective a little bit, because I think as a policy maker, I always say a good policy maker is one who can anticipate the future so that we don't end up being the regulator. So from that perspective, let me try and encapsulate all the views and visions that my respected super seniors have already placed before us and try and build on it and take you through a range. So my talk today will be focused on that range, and the range is of two kinds. One is the range from the global to the regional to the local perspective, which is very, very necessary. And then there is also a range of things that we need to do, and I'll try and touch more on the things that have not been spoken of. Say for example, big data analysis, data insights, which is what the work that Ministry of Tourism and MOSPI are doing. I'll also talk of service standards, responsible tourism and sustainability, the ESG governance model, which is very, very essential, and how they impact procurement and all infrastructure. So let me begin with the geopolitics of the whole thing. We live in a VUCA world today. I have been saying that for some of us who've been part of the same circuit of seminars, where V stands for vulnerable, U stands for uncertain, C stands for complex, and A stands for ambiguity. And VUCA is not just because we are having a theater of war somewhere or because of terrorist attacks. VUCA is the general turmoil that is happening in the world, in a transitory world. So I think that against this background, we have to see a whole lot of stuff. There are also tariff wars that we are seeing right now. So this is the scenario of the geopolitics as of now. Amidst this VUCA world, if I give you also a picture of the data, just to let you see how we figured where we are situated, to give you a context in terms of data. So if you look at 2024, that was the time I was DG in the Ministry of Tourism. So while we all know that France gets about 100 million tourists, globally we get about 1300 million tourists. That is, I'm using the data of 2024 because this is 25 and we are still in the ongoing dynamic year. If I give you the data of India, last year we were 17% up from 2023 and we got about 9.9 million people into the country, which tells us that we are 1/10 of France, which gets about 100 million people. In the overall scenario, in 1300 million people who are part of this momentum, there is a huge leg space that we have in getting foreign tourists into the country inbound. Now, if you look at the people from India who have traveled, because India is pretty much an aspirational country, we have just become the 4th largest and we are on our way to becoming the 3rd largest. So we are an aspirational country in that sense. So if you look at the people who traveled last year from India to all different countries, about 195 plus countries, and if you count the island states, 222 countries in the world, then you will see the number jumped. In 2023, that number was 27 million, it jumped to 33 million. Compared to the inbound, it is almost 4 times, somewhere 3.5 times of the number that has traveled abroad. Which basically means, what is driving that momentum out? Because tourism does not just ride on cultural assets and programming, it also rides very heavily on novelty. So are you able to give people novel experiences in whatever you do is very, very important. What is happening right now, and which we must very, very carefully calibrate at all levels, is that what the West has done and dusted with, are we trying to introduce that here? Because if you're trying to introduce that here, which would definitely mean that people who have exhausted themselves doing that same experience will be looking for something novel in the country. I will give you one more statistics about the world tourism movement, and then I will move on to infrastructure. And that statistics is that 1465 million people crisscrossed the globe last year. That is foreign visitations is what we call them in the globe. People coming from different places to different places, many to many kind of a thing. But if you look at the same domestic tourist visitations in India, you will find that the number was double. 2,763 million people only in India. So I often say that India is not just a 5,000 years old civilization, it is not just a modern country, but it is a continent in itself. And what drove this crisscrossing in the country? It was driven primarily by what you call the pilgrim tourist circuit, based on the fact that in the last 3 or 4 years, several religious tourist circuits have come up in the country, and global destinations. The Honorable Prime Minister has today given us a target that we must develop 50 global destinations in the country, preferably one each in each of the 36 states that we have. And if some states are able to show better, then they can do maybe 2 or 3 depending on their capacity and bandwidth. And those then will become what Mr. Bhalla was saying, that hotels or accommodations that come up in those areas will then get what is called the status, the infrastructure status. So they are able to benefit from the long-term loans that the industry will get. So that is very important. So somebody was also talking about the concept of convergence. Now, what is happening in the whole scheme of things? When we talk of tourism, we talk of the infrastructure ministries that support us. But somewhere, if you go back down, because I said I'll talk of the range, and now moving from the global to the national, if I come down to the local, because the devil lies in the nuances and a success also lies there, you have to look at what is called the Devasthan departments in the state. Devasthan departments in the state actually provide a lot of subsidies for this global domestic tourist visitations. If I just look at my state, of Rajasthan, they give you money to do from Rajasthan to, say, for West Bengal, the Ganga Sagar Darshan, and a lot of people from Rajasthan go for the Ganga Sagar Darshan. They give you a certain amount to be able to do that. They give you subsidized train tickets, they give you stuff like that. And I think if our Indian movement, if people are traveling in India and spurring the economy, adding to the GDP and the employment, then I think the Devasthan department, which somehow is just left on one side of the margin, needs to be brought back in terms of our tourism policy and interventions, in terms of connecting the dots and doing away with the silos. Let's just move to look at the larger landscape or what is happening in the infrastructure department. In 2014, the Honorable Prime Minister said something very important. He spoke about the 5 T's, where he said that India's Vikas bhi, Virasat bhi, the development will come from our heritage. And then he said for that to happen, we will need the 5 T's, and he mentioned those 5 T's. He said the first 5 T is tradition, and we know that tourism and tradition are kind of like the conjoined twins joined at the hip, and the assets in fact enable the footfalls to come into the country, so that is very important. Then he said something, the other T he said was moving from tradition to talent. And I think a lot has been said about talent, the skill development, because if you look at the hospitality sector where I work today, you will find that for every room in the branded category, you will need, there is a ratio of 1:3. For every room servicing, you will need at least 3 people. If you go higher up, maybe you will need 5 people. So there is huge potential in the industry for employment. There is also huge potential for getting the right people. How do you get the right people? If you look at the hospitality sector, the nuances of the hospitality sector, today it's not just about the hotel keys. Where is the distribution? Where are those hotels coming up? Which city has the potential to absorb? Because we also see, if you talk of today, India has about 1.8 million rooms, and we say that by 2030 we aspire to have 4 million rooms with the infrastructure status, with the 50 global destinations we are coming up. And then if you look at the reports of the hospitality sector and you look at where your ADR is coming from, how much is your occupancy? Occupancy in 2008 was from 2008 to 2019, we were doing 65 to 68 to almost 70%. Where are we in terms of occupancy? Because you don't want your keys and your rooms to go waste by building more keys than you have occupancy. So your occupancy, your bottom line from the ADR, your high level of occupancy and your increase in the room rates will require very nuanced kind of understanding of where do you want to take the room keys so that you grow in your occupancy, you grow in your ADR. Because once your occupancy grows, your ADR will stabilize, will not be very high, so it will be good for the people. And I think the GST reforms have done that for rooms below 7,500, which is also attracting mostly people who are on the pilgrim circuit, who would like to just come and stay the night. So there are intricacies in how you will have to do the policy planning. And when you talk of accommodations today, you also have to talk of service standards and sustainability very much. Because today, the person who is doing tourism, so there are trends in the market. You know, the global scenario also works on trend. There's something called intergenerational policy making. I'm a Gen X, I have super seniors who are probably from the baby boomers generation, and we are talking to some of you who belong probably to the Gen Z, which has become kind of a difficult word today. But then you also have the alphas and the betas. The betas were born this year from February 2020. The people who are taking decisions today are born, which is called the millennial generation, are born between 1983 to 1997. And you know how much somebody spoke of the demographics. It's not just about 65% of our population being below 35 years of age. But there is also one aspect. There are 2 aspects, and I'll mention that quickly. One is that the middle class, for which we are all aspiring, which is the class which is on that, which will give us the top rungs, the range that will give us, that is today pegged at 30 million. by 2047, which is what we are aspiring, the Vision 2047, when we ideally would want to have the 100 million people come into India, this middle class is going to grow from 30 million to 61 million. And we must anticipate this growth, align it with our various segments in terms of accommodations, in terms of everything else. And in this 30 million today, 46% of this 30 million middle class today is the millennial. And 72% of this millennial population today is taking decisions which are based on data insights and which are tech driven. So we have to up our ante in introducing technology, programming based on technology, evidence-based policy making to be able to ensure that people can use this ecosystem in India and come to India because of that, because this technological infrastructure, and in fact India has one of the most beautiful digital infrastructure stack today. You look at UPI, you look at Bheem, you look at the RuPay Pay launches that are coming in, you look at the numbers that are using this. I think we are number one when it comes to providing this. You look at the Digi Locker, you can do paperless Yatra today. You look at the Digi Yatra app, you can do seamless movement. It is not just multimodal connectivity with 10,000 kilometers of metros in 23 cities. Not just 125 operational airports, with 2 new airports at Navi Mumbai and Noida coming up. It is not just 10 seaports getting converted with green infrastructure for cruise terminals and 2 for yachting. It is not all of this infrastructure, but much more that is happening in terms of the digital infrastructure. I think we have to use both the physical and the digital infrastructure, ride on this digital and physical infrastructure using concepts of sustainability and service standards. And this will require huge amounts of seminars like this. India has taken some COP commitments in terms of Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 ESG goals, which we as hotels, as physical infrastructure, in terms of mobility, we have to deliver. India has also shown the world the Goa roadmap, which contains all of these green tourism. When we talk of hotels, we also need to see of what the government is doing in terms of incentivizing 1 lakh homestays. So the range is from branded 7-star hotels to local authentic experience of homestays, because a lot of our economies, Arvind sir was mentioning about how manufacturing and secondary, primary economies were doing and how structural reforms were happening. But I also want to mention, I've also been a student of economics. When I was in standard 12, agriculture contributed about 70%, including disguised unemployment in agriculture, and service sector, which is the tertiary industry, was only 12%. Manufacturing was 14 to 16%. Today, in today's GDP contribution, the service sector contributes about 54%, and tourism is a service sector. In fact, it has the potential to lead. When our trade imbalances may have problems, it's the service sector which will be able to keep us buoyant in the world economics of trade and international relations. The other thing that I want to also mention, building on this whole economic model which Arvind sir spoke about, when in classical times we would speak of the classical economics where we had 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital and enterprise. Today when you talk of, we are not in a classical economics world, but a policy making still talks of land, labor, capital, enterprise. They are of course definitely important, but we also have to understand there is one very important factor of production which I think Bes Barua Sahab mentioned very much. He said, when he spoke of the TSA account, the tourism satellite account model, in which he clearly said, if I recall rightly, that we are only using 5 verticals. But when you look at the creative cultural economy, which is today driving your service sector, Australia started working on it in 1994 and we are working on it now. What we are trying to do is there are 20 sectors. In the 70s, what FMCG was in the 70s, what was driving the manufacturing growth, the AVCG is driving that growth today. And there are 20 different sectors, all of them are related to our tourism, travel and hospitality sector. And this is where we must invest money, because what is this doing? One mention which has not happened on this forum yet, and I'd like to introduce, is the intellectual property rights. If you look at Berkeley, which has become the #1 public university where I also studied, it is driving the startup revolution, just as the startup revolution and incentivization is happening in our country. 1 billion has been kept for that in our own country. 2-3 last points, and I know I will keep within the time. What is happening is that in the age of the culture creative economy, land, capital, labor, enterprise has been supplemented, added, complemented by 4 other factors of production, which are ideas, which is the I of intellectual property rights, the ideation, the idea, which is today becoming an asset. That asset is a milch cow, if you want, generates revenue, and based on that idea asset revenue model, we have to build business models which are royalty generating. So this is a return, a retro, what you call the neo-zamindari model in the fintech space of contracting and procurement. I think that is the bandwagon that we must join. I'll give you one example of how this is all coming together. Today, if you look at Netflix, if you look at The Economist, if you look at any magazine, if you look at Bloomberg, for example, if you look at Visa and MasterCard, for example, एक के साथ एक business free आ रहा है. Visa, business card, all of these Bloombergs of the world, what are they doing? They have subscription models. All the trade, travel magazines have subscription models. The magazine comes to you. In return for the magazine and the payment for the magazine, you give them your mobile number, you give them your email number, you give them your address. And then what happens? You have a collection of data. Based on that data, you build data insights. And this is what we were doing, at least I was doing when I was DG Tourism, to use that data insights. And you would have seen, there are Howard's report on how India travels, there's Outlook report on how India travels. India Today is going to do a report on how India travels. The ministry also comes up with its own annual compendium of how we travel. ITBC has done that recently. We need to be able to use the data that we are collecting to allow that data to speak to us, and using that data to be able to do commercial contracting. I think that is what is going to take us into the global age. People have mentioned different forms: the medical value tourism, the heal in India, the MICE, the meet in India, the wed in India, the sports, the music concert economies, shopping. Dubai was built on shopping. And how is it that we forget that shopping is such an important idea? The Ministry of Textiles has set up the Kunj recently, which is the first time where the handicrafts, artisans and the handloom textile weavers have got prominence by having a government retail market, which is a one-stop shop solution for anybody who wants to buy anything authentic which comes with a tag. I think these are the models that we need to build in the future to be able to take tourism, travel and hospitality industry into the future. Just one also important thing, because I've spoken a lot about statistics. There is something called the global indices, which is the Travel and Trade Development Index, on which India is currently at 39. And we harp a lot about how we need to improve our ranking with ease of business and all of these other things. But I will give you one example of the Southeast Asian neighborhood. Thailand is 45, Malaysia is 48, Vietnam is 84, and they get many more tourists than us. So the game is going back to the Archimedes principle, which means less inputs and more output, which is you give me the lever and I will shake and move the earth. Now, what is the lever that we want? And I'm going to be a little candid, and you will all excuse me because I am all your juniors, so you will have your blessings upon me when I am candid and I say this. This is a mindset change, and this is a little disruption that I'm very humbly being from the middle of the administration. I'm daring with a disclaimer to say that when in seminars like these, when we say that infrastructure, logistics, ease of doing business, supply chain, destination management, I'll just say one word about destination management. Destination management, I'm totally on with all the speakers who've mentioned destination management, but I'd like to just introduce one aspect of destination management. Our ancestors from 5,000 to 0 years gave us the legacy of the built heritage, which today is the magnet which attracts tourists, right? So if we can't do a job with modern technology, with all the softwares and all the scaffolds, then I think somewhere we need to think, because our destination management needs to put architecture, needs to put aesthetics in the center of destination management. We need to be conscientious not just of sustainability, but use of materiality, use of color codes, use of how we do signages, because we don't want what has been built by our ancestors to get spoiled by our contractors. So that is very important. And coming back to the point that I wanted to make is the mindset change. And the mindset change has to be from the fact that while we all think it's nice to be on the side of infrastructure and technology and data, but there is one side that all of us need to support, because while we think that it is cerebral to talk of these things, it is also cerebral to talk of the third triad. I always say that tourism today needs data and technology, but there is another thing that tourism also needs, and that is marketing. I think somewhere there it has seeped into our system that when we speak of marketing, we will not be very cerebral in our approach. It will be like sales and marketing is not something that government departments should be doing. It is not. But we live in an age of infocalypse. We live in an age of AI and digital and data technologies. And I think the world is on Instagram today. The newer generations are on Instagram today. There are no physical offices. There are co-working spaces today. And I think all the ideation which is running businesses, if you look at a lot of people, you will find that they have data centers, they have clouds, and they have no physical offices, and they are doing much better than people who have all of these physical assets. Today is a world of being asset light and technology, contractual, IPR heavy. And I think that shift needs to be made. And I think some respectable platform has to be given in our ideation and in our discussions to marketing. Today we have moved, while we are talking of quantum physics, there is also something called quantum marketing. And I think we must give due space to both digital technologies, data insights, business insights, and also to marketing, because I thought that is very, very interesting. And not just interesting, but it is the need of the hour. So having said that, I think there was a freewheeling discussion touching on whole, as many aspects as I could recall and remember. But I'm really grateful for giving me this opportunity, this time, to be able to speak to all of you in the august presence of my super seniors who have it's also very nervous to be able to say so many things where you already know that people who have practiced and continue to lend so much of their cerebral space to discussions like this, that you stand in deep humbleness and gratitude to be able to share the same space and time and age and ideation with all of them. So will all gratitude and greetings. Thank you very much for having me here. I hope some of what I said will stay back and make some sense for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, ma'am, for that insight.